What's good, y'all? UFC Fight Night Blanchfield versus Fiorot takes place this weekend in just a couple of days. I'm going to be breaking down the full card, starting with the first fight on the early prelims. Just to jump right into it, we've got Angel Pacheco taking on Caolan Loughran. Caolan Loughran, or Loughran, I don't really know how you pronounce his name exactly. He came in and he debuted against Taylor Lapilus like at the end of last year, a couple months before the end of the year. And he looked pretty good for somebody that was fighting Taylor Lapilus' style, which is just like a stay-at-range kickboxer type of style. And he was landing decent shots. He was finding decent pockets to do things. But overall, he just kind of got outpointed. I think this is going to be a different type of fight. Angel Pacheco is going to be getting hit with a lot more of the shots that Caolan Loughran is going to be loading up than somebody like a Taylor Lapilus is going to be. I don't think that Angel Pacheco is necessarily tough enough from what I've seen in his 9 bouts to withstand what I think Caolan Loughran is going to bring, especially knowing that he can't go 0-2 for his first 2 in the biggest promotion. So I'm going to be siding with Caolan Loughran getting it done by a second round TKO, maybe even a first. Actually, I'm going to go with the first round TKO at the end of the first round. And then we move on into the second fight of the night, a pretty solid one in my opinion. Andre Petroski is taking on Jacob Malkoun, who was robbed in his last fight. He beat the shit out of Cody Brundage, and because he landed like one elbow, I think it was, that looked like it was behind the head. I don't even remember if it was completely or not. But because of that, Cody Brundage faked like he couldn't continue, and Jacob Malkoun got DQ'd. Such a horrible decision by the ref. I think Jacob Malkoun's probably going to win this fight simply because he has more tools on the feet. And also, let me just apologize ahead of time if I sound like super congested. I get really bad seasonal allergies in March and April. So it's going to sound like this every year that I make content in March and April. It's actually terrible. But we're just going to try to truck through it. Andre Petroski on the feet, he looks kind of horrible, I'm not going to lie. And that's why early on in his UFC career, I didn't pick him much. I started to pick him as he built up steam. But, he just got flatlined recently really quickly. And I think Jacob Malkoun is just more of a dog than him. So I'm going to trust Jacob Malkoun to defend the early onslaught in terms of like takedowns and grappling. I think he's actually a solid grappler himself. So I'm going to trust Jacob Malkoun to get it done by a gritty decision. Then we move on up the card. Melissa Gatto taking on Viktoriia Dudakova. Give me 1 second. I don't trust this shit, so we're going to flip a coin. Heads for Melissa Gatto. Tails for Viktoriia Dudakova. And we got tails. Yeah, so I'm going with Viktoriia Dudakova. That's who I was going to originally pick anyways to continue her undefeated streak. The only thing that susses me out a bit is Melissa Gatto is, in my opinion, from what I've seen across their fights, more tough. She's a more tough female. And that goes a long way in the flyweight division and in the bantamweight division. Honestly, it just goes a long way in general in the sport, but especially in the female, like 125, 135 pound divisions. Those tough women usually ascend to the top of the rankings a lot quicker than the more technical women per se. So I'm going to be siding with Viktoriia Dudakova just because I think she's going to be able to outland on the feet and because the coin flips tails. Moving on up the card, Aslan taking on Anton Turkalj. I like Anton despite the fact that I think he's lost all of his UFC fights. He has an exciting style and all of his fights, despite them being losses, looked good. This guy that he's taking on right now has an impressive 12-1 record, and his one loss came to Anton. In a pretty solid fight, Anton ends up getting it done by a rear naked choke. He honestly could have gotten knocked out multiple times in the first round. He was just avoiding bombs. And then this guy, Aslan continues his onslaught after that and just builds up a solid win streak, getting himself now into the UFC, where I do think he's going to get it done against Anton Turkalj. I don't think that Anton's going to be able to continue his unbeaten streak against this guy. I think the first time they fought, obviously they were both a lot younger, but I think Ebo was even more inexperienced than Anton. And I think Anton's weird style really helped him on the regional circuit. But now in the big league, I think Ebo knows how to beat this guy. And those shots that were that close to landing in the first fight are going to land in this fight. So I'm going to trust Aslan to brutally knock out Anton Turkalj and probably get him kicked out of the UFC by this point. And then we move on up the card. Connor Matthews taking on Dennis Buzukja, fighting out of Sarah Longo's team or gym. I'm going to go with Connor Matthews But this is honestly a fight where I wouldn't be surprised if Denis Buzukja gets it done. Because from what I've seen so far in the UFC, I feel like I haven't really seen like his full game. He kind of got, just outpointed and didn't really do much against Sean Woodson. And then he got smoked by Jamall Emmers. And I feel like I haven't seen enough from this guy to know really how good he is. Conor Matthews, he's 7-1, so already I feel a little bit more comfortable just in the fact that he's only lost one time. And he has good hands. His fight on the Contender Series, it showed me that he's ready to step into the big leagues at the very least. And that's honestly good enough for me because a lot of these fighters, they're debuting and they're not really ready. I do feel like Conor Matthews is ready. Maybe Denis Buzukja is the one that's not. We're going to find out. I'm going to side with Conor Matthews getting this one done by a decision. I think Denis is tough, but I don't think that he's going to be able to do enough over the 3 rounds to get the nod on the judges' scorecards. Moving on up the card, we got Julio Arce taking on Herbert Burns. Another one where I feel like iffy to pick on because my brain's telling me Julio Arce because Herbert Burns is definitely the lesser of the Burns. But Herbert can really just, surprise you and catch you out of nowhere with some weird shit. Who did he knock out with like a knee? I'm trying to remember. He knocked out Nate the Train with a knee. That fight caught me off guard. I did not expect that. He was honestly on a pretty good win streak at that point. He won his first 2 in the UFC. And then he lost to Daniel Pineda, which is crazy. You can't be losing to Daniel Pineda and expecting to go on any type of win streak. And that was back in 2020. And then he had 3 canceled bouts. And then he fought Bill Algeo. And he lost. It says exhaustion from damage. I'm trying to remember what happened there. Did he just get melted by the pressure? I mean, that is pretty typical of people that fight Bill Algeo. Maybe he could be wired back in. There's always at least one weird fight on the card. I'm going to flip my pick. I'm going to go with Herbert Burns simply because there's always one weird fight on the card. I need to try to capitalize on that. I'm going to go with Herbert Burns getting this one done by some weird type of knockout. Fuck it. If this one hits, I'm doing this every card religiously. Next on up the card, Virna Jandiroba taking on Lupita Godinez. Lupita looks finer and finer every time we see her fight, I swear to God. I'm picking Lupita Godinez. She's on a streak. Every time I've picked her in the last 2 years, she's gotten it done. I trust this girl. Virna, on the other hand, she did beat Marina Rodriguez recently, which catches me off guard like crazy. I picked Marina, of course. But Virna ends up getting it done. This is the annoying thing about this division and all the female fights. Unless it's the top 3 and the champion, you usually just see the most random shit happen. You can't predict it at all. I'm going to side with Lupita Godinez. I think she's just going to be able to do more on the feet. And when Virna tries to mix it up to the grappling, Lupita's counter wrestling is just going to be too good. Like we've seen time and time again. I'm going to trust her to be able to do this clean over 3 rounds. It's going to be light for her. I'm going to trust her to get done by a probably unanimous decision. I just had a stroke. Ignore that. Wild. Moving on up the card. Nate the Train taking on Jamall Emmers. Huge Nate the Train fan. Bummed that he's getting these types of matchups, but I mean, you kind of have to at featherweight. There's no easy matchups at featherweight in this sport. I'm going to be siding with Jamall Emmers to get this one done and continue his streak. What is his streak right now? Oh, he barely has a streak. I forgot he lost that split decision to Jack Jenkins that you could argue he won. I did think he won that fight too, so you could argue he's on a 3-fight win streak if you believe that. But he beat Denis Buzukja and Hussein Ashkabov. Not the greatest wins. And then he has a win over Vince Cachero, a loss to Giga Shikadze. Yeah, he's not doing too hot in the UFC so far, but I will trust him to build on that nice win he got over Denis Buzukja. I love Nate the Train though. Fuck. Maybe I shouldn't. Nah, I gotta trust my brain here. I can't go with my gut too many times on a card. Last week I had a rough one here on the channel, boys. 6-7. I got the main event correct, but 6-7, terrible. I'm gonna side with Jamall Emmers getting this one done probably by knockout. I love Nate the Train, but his chin is just not good enough anymore. Then we move on to the main card. Chidi and Njokuani taking on Rhys McKee. I want to pick Rhys McKee here because he's tough. And Chidi and Njokuani showed me that he breaks easily against somebody like Michelle Oleksiejczuk, who just got melted against Michelle Pereira, which could be a style matchup difference. But still, it's just, I don't like it. I really don't like it. Rhys McKee, let me just look real quick. Rhys McKee lost against Khamzat and Alex Moreno in the UFC, his first 2 fights. Left, he went to Cage Warriors, built up a good win streak, all stoppages. Then comes in, loses to Angelusa. but it was a close fight, and he was honestly coming back in it. It was just mainly the grappling that was screwing him up, which he doesn't have to worry about, I don't think, against Chidi. You never know. Chidi hasn't been looking too good, if I can remember correctly. I mean, he lost money on that last, 3 fights in a row. 3 fights in a row down. Chidi, my boy. You know what? I am going to mix it up. I'm going to side with Rhys McKee. Although I think Chidi is more durable. Maybe not more durable chin-wise, but like body-wise, leg-wise, all that. More durable and can land more damaging strikes. But I'm going to trust Rhys McKee and his toughness to withstand the first round of big damage and come back and start to melt Chidi and get a TKO where he's kind of just tired and he folds to the damage because he doesn't want to take any more. It's going to be another mix-up. Fuck it. You got to take these chances. Then we move on up the card. Bill Algeo taking on Kyle Nelson. Kyle somehow beat Blake Builder. Maybe not somehow. I mean, we're starting to realize Blake Builder's not as good as maybe originally he kind of looked. But Bill Algeo, I feel like he has a great style for this type of fight. Kyle Nelson's like a one-and-done type of guy. Bill Algeo is going to destroy anybody that fights like that. He's on a 2-fight win streak against TJ Brown and Alex Hernandez, and they were pretty good fights. He lost to Andre Fili. It was a split decision. Another great fight. And if he hadn't lost that, he'd be on like a 5-fight win streak against solid names. His last loss coming against Ricardo Ramos back in 2021, I believe it was. He's just overall looked really solid in the UFC. He's lost to 2 Ricardos in the UFC. That's funny. And then Andre Fili. And other than that, he's beaten some solid people like Joe Anderson Brito, Spike Carlisle, who's an underrated name. And I didn't think he was going to get that one done back then. I'm going to be siding with Bill Algeo. He's just too durable. He mixes up angles. He's good on the ground. I don't think Kyle Nelson has anything anywhere unless he just catches him with a weird one. Moving on up the card, Nursultan Ruziboev taking on Cedriques Dumas. I'm going to be siding with Nursultan Ruziboev. This dude's a freak. He's like 6'5" at middleweight, which is just unreal. Look at him, too. He looks like he's like back a couple updates. No offense. But like, he does look like he's from, the Stone Ages. And I trust anybody that's from those times to take on the soy men in these times. Cedriques by no means is a soy man. He's a decent fighter. I just don't think he has enough tools, especially with only 10 fights versus somebody who has 40-something. Yeah, I'm going to be trusting Nursultan to get it done and improve to 2-0 in the UFC. Moving on, Bruno Silva taking on Chris Weidman. There's not much to say on this. Chris Weidman doesn't belong in the sport anymore. No offense, you were a champion. You were the man at one point. You were him, but you're not anymore. You're not him. And Bruno Silva is still a young guy with bombs in his hands. He's going to kick your legs twice. You're going to fold. And then he's going to knock you the fuck out. I just don't want to see it because I really like Chris Weidman. He's a great guy. He just doesn't belong anymore. I'm going with Bruno Silva by a TKO. Even though Chris is tough, I think it's just he's going to put too much damage on him. Moving on to the co-main event. Some say it should be the true main event. I don't necessarily agree. Although I do think this main event is pretty dry. I still think it's deserving of the main event, but this is a great co-main event nonetheless. Vicente Luque taking on Joaquin Buckley. I kind of want to side with Joaquin Buckley here just because Vicente has taken a lot of damage as of late. Why am I calling him Vicente? Vicente has taken a lot of damage as of late, and the way he got TKO'd by Jeff Neal just didn't sit well with me. Did he get knocked out by somebody else after that? He didn't, right? Yeah, no, it was the loss to Jeff Neal and then RDA come back. And then he's had some canceled bouts. I know on paper, I feel like Vicente is going to knock him out clean with like some in-the-pocket boxing. I don't know what it'll be, like maybe a straight down the pipe or like a hook in tight because Joaquin's going to be coming in explosive, landing the first couple. Vicente's probably going to like have good blocks and then boom, counter quick. And it's going to be lights out for Joaquin, who we've seen go clean out a couple of times already in the octagon. But I also, Joaquin is kind of on a streak right now. He's been looking good in his fights. Even in his losses, he keeps it competitive. And he's hungry and he's young. But I feel like Vicente is still also just the same. It's just maybe a little bit more weathered, but a lot more technical. I'm going to side with Vicente. I'm going to be really disappointed if I get this one wrong because I have been feeling like all week side with Joaquin. But I'm going to be siding with Vicente to get this one done. He's just too clean in the boxing department. And then we have the main event, Erin Blanchfield taking on Manon Fiorot. This one could be really competitive. I hope it ends up being like a 5-round war because it's been a minute since we've seen one of those fights where everybody's talking about it and just buzzing for the next couple of days because it was so competitive and you don't know who really won, the full like 3 rounds because it's that close. It's like somebody has 2 or both of them have 2, who won the 3rd round. in the split. I want it to be something like that, but I could see it being a really boring decision for Erin Blanchfield, or a boring decision where Manon keeps Blanchfield at range and then clinches up against the cage. I don't know if she could actually hold her up against the clinch. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe there is no way for this fight to just be like one type of boring style, because even when Blanchfield gets takedowns, she does something with them. I am going to be siding with Blanchfield because she has that tool. She can take it to the ground, and that's a big thing in MMA. Manon is a little bit better on the feet. She's definitely more technical, and she has more power in her punches and in her kicks and whatnot. But Blanchfield is still somebody that can hang on the feet even if you're that much more technical than her, because she has that pressure and the threat of the takedown. So she can just land goofy shit all day. And I think she's going to a little bit. She's going to try to set up her takedowns on the feet. She's going to quickly realize that she's not in the same realm as Manon in the kickboxing, and then she's going to easily get her to the ground. Manon might get up once or twice, but she's going to be able to just chase it again and again because she has that cardio. So I'm going to trust Erin Blanchfield to get this one done. I don't know if she's going to be able to finish Manon. I think that's going to be a hard ask. I'm going to trust it to be a decision, probably unanimous, where she wins like 4 rounds. I think she's going to give up maybe 1 round, but she's going to overall just dominate this fight. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'm sorry again that I sound so congested. It's probably annoying as fuck. I know how annoyed I kind of get when I listen to creators and they sound stuffed up, but it is life, I guess. So let me know what you guys think down below again, and I will catch y'all when the fight happens.